Hey everyone, Chris here. A little bit of a caveat on this episode. It is going out late, like really late. This is a fantastic conversation with Jonathan. And it's timeless, as you will. So it's going to go. It's really worth a listen. But this was after a couple months after he won Silver City Century, and before he podiumed at Pisgah at the Soldier Cutoff Hill Duro and in Glenwood. So we'll have to get him back on and follow up with those. But for now, enjoy this fantastic conversation with Jonathan. Alrighty, welcome everyone to the Iowa Gravel Series Podium Podcast. I am your host, Chris McQueen, and like always, we have an amazing guest here with us today, and that is Jonathan Waite. Jonathan is a multi-podium winner. In fact, I think he has a win at least once, if not multiple, every season that the Gravel Series has gone on. So Jonathan is a force to be reckoned with, and he is so much fun. And actually, he was one of the first people to ever take me on a bike ride in Iowa. So
I remember that ride.
Yeah. You said I had an engine, but I think you were just being nice.
Nice isn't my brand.
And if you haven't noticed, we did not intentionally wear the same t-shirt, but we are wearing the same t-shirt, probably because we like all the things with bikes. So Jonathan, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much
for having me. Good to be here.
So I know we've had you on the podcast before. I can't remember if it was just you alone or with a group.
Panel.
Yeah. So it's good that we get you kind of alone here. I think that'll be good. So do me a favor and kind of remind me a little bit like where you grew up. Did you grow up in Iowa, Midwest, or somewhere else? And how did you get into biking?
Sure. So I grew up in Ohio, Canton, Ohio. And I started racing BMX bike after watching the movie Rad. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Movie Rad. It's a radical movie. I did that, and then I started running cross country and track. So I put the bike aside, ran cross country and track, and was very injury prone, constantly getting injured because I was training super hard, not sleeping enough, and the bike was always my cross training when I was a runner.
I fear that might be a theme that we come back to a little bit here with the podcast today. So we might have to dip into that. But did you ever do a backflip like what is demonstrated in Rad?
No, in BMX racing, I always kept the rubber on the ground as much as I possibly could. I found that backflips were slower than just pedaling hard. And speed has always been my only objective.
All right, that makes sense. So you started off with BMX, and then what was your next bike?
So my next bike wasn't until I was 21 years old. I got a Trek. I was 21 at Brigham Young University, and there are all these mountains. Then I had ridden my commuter bike around and had really enjoyed that. And so I was like, I'm going to get a bike. 21. I just married Tiffany, and I promised her. I said, this bike won't get in the way of family events. I remember saying that. It won't.
Does she remember you saying that?
No, I don't. She's never held me to that.
Oh, she's very kind.
Yeah, I started riding around Provo and then did an internship in Wisconsin before my senior year. And anyone who's ridden Southwest Wisconsin, not far from where Trek is headquartered. I'm not a Trek guy, but they put their headquarters in a really good place. Fantastic road riding out there, big hills. Every road is paved because they got to get the milk from the farms in the wintertime. And so I just fell in love with road riding between Provo and Southwest Wisconsin. It was the perfect storm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I grew up in Utah as well, so I'm very familiar with those mountains now. But for me, it was mountain biking. So were you riding mainly in the valley? If you're not familiar with the Orem, Provo, Utah Valley area, there's a pretty good sized valley, but then the mountains, they go almost like straight up from the valley. Like it is no joke. You hit a hill and then you are only going up for quite some time. So were you sticking to the flats or were you in the mountains? What did you prefer?
The mountains is what I preferred back then. Squaw Peak, Alpine Loop, those were my jams.
Yeah, I just did the Alpine Loop a couple years ago out of nostalgia. It's still a beautiful route. So if you ever get out to Utah, highly recommend some of those areas. I've not been to Wisconsin, so that might be something we put on.
That's a destination for you. Really good place.
So you got the road bike, and then you end up in Omaha, still doing road stuff.
Yep.
What was the next bike?
So next I got a mountain bike to ride Lewis and Clark Lookout Point, which was really near where I lived. And to this day, that remains my home track. I love racing there. Finally got a win on the Lewis and Clark Lookout Point earlier this season.
Oh,
I've been hunting that win for 10 years, but there'd always been Brad Own or Dylan McNeil or Brandon Farnham in front of me. But this year, none of them were there. And so I finally got to win.
I think Dylan was signed up for Silver City, but wasn't able to show. I could be wrong on that. But you've raced Dylan quite a bit. I feel like I'm trying to remember where I thought I saw Dylan signed up or potentially signed up, and I was kind of like, oh wow, this could.
Yeah, he hurt his hand, or he got his hand hurt up at Lutzen. I don't know the whole story there. Some wreck. He got second, but his hand was injured. So I know he's been kind of easing up, getting ready for cyclocross season. But that kid is insanely fast now. He's really grown up.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about Dylan, so we hope to get him on the podcast sometime. But then also, I've heard a lot about Lutzen. I was talking with Nate Kohlbaum not too long ago, and Lutzen is one of the ones that he's really excited about. So you've done Lutzen. Have you done Lutzen?
I did it in 2019. I got 11th. I didn't have a fantastic race. Didn't have a bad race, but it was good. Good enough race to go to. I haven't been back yet. I'm not sure I ever will.
Okay. Well, that's I kind of understand that. I'm not going to say that's exactly my tone about Ragbri, having just recently completed that, where it's like, oh, I'm glad I did that. Probably won't do it again. But we can talk about something else, because I don't think Ragbri is going to be as nearly as interesting as some of the other stuff that you have to say. Okay, so I happen to also know that you've done crit racing quite a bit, and I think in a previous podcast you mentioned like, well, I do gravel because there's not enough crit racing, basically, or something to that.
I'm anyone's dog for a bone. Whatever race there is, I'll do it. Gravel, mountain, road. I won't do cyclocross.
What can I ask why?
I'm bad at it.
What are you bad at?
For some reason, I can't I'm not a great mountain biker, but the longer the race, the better. But cyclocross is short and very technical, and so it just plays to all of my weaknesses. So I'd rather take that time of the year as kind of a quasi rest period.
Okay. Well, no, that makes sense. There's still so much that I haven't done. I'm always curious about different races and what people like and what they don't like, and what to jump into next. So cyclocross is still also on my to-do list. I did a little bit in California, but not enough to, I think, really understand what it is. I think the cyclocross racing out here is much better. So tell me a little bit about crit racing, though, because that's one that I've also have on my to-do list, and I will tell you, it terrifies me. Like cyclocross, I'm not worried. Like, you shoulder the bike, jump on and off of it, I feel great. But I look at cyclocross sometime, and maybe it's my cornering, I don't know, but it scares the crap out of me to be in a bunch that fast on corners on a closed course. Is that fair, or is
Especially
that
when you watch videos? Yeah, no, it's fair. When you watch videos of it, it seems very hectic and it seems very fast and scary. Once you learn the fundamentals of cornering a road bike, it doesn't get as scary, but there's always an element of fear. I'm racing the Tuesday night crit tomorrow, and it's just a little podunk crit that I started 7 years ago, but someone else, Mark, is kind of leading up now, and it's not huge, but I still get nervous. I still get butterflies before it, because you never know what could happen. But here's my experience. I've been badly injured gravel racing. I've been badly injured mountain biking, I've never been badly injured crit racing. And I've gone down crit racing, but I've never been badly injured going down.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So like road rash sort of going down just a little bit.
Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Take some skin off.
I guess some bad things can happen, but it's unlikely typically. And especially these Tuesday night ones that we're doing over at the Baxter Arena.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. Not much there.
So you'd recommend it. You think how many folks do you usually see in each of these? I don't even know how it works. Like how many folks do you end up seeing in a division or in a
10 to 20 per race? 10 to 20 per race. So it's not a huge field. It's fine. You just got to get in and do it. What's the word? And the stakes. There's no pressure on a Tuesday night. There's not really any big time crit racing anymore. And I was never really a big time crit racer, but the Tuesday night ones are real fun.
Okay. How long is a race? Like what is it?
35 minutes for the expert race is 35 minutes. I think the beginner race is 25. So it's real short.
Okay. So you get in and 20 folks or so, and they run a few, and they basically just try and see how many laps you can get in that amount of time, and whoever has the most laps wins, or at the front of the pack.
They'll count down. They'll figure out how fast you're doing laps, and they'll say, all right, how many more laps to get us to 35 minutes? And then they'll put 10 on the board, and then you watch the laps count down. And it's a very strategic race with the other racers figuring out, should I attack? Should I sit in and wait? Oh, someone just attacked. What should we do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a game of chess while you're doing exercise.
That actually does sound fun. Like trying to figure out the attacks, when to attack, the strategy stuff. That sounds like a lot of fun. Okay. Yeah. All right. You kind of almost got me sold. So we'll see if maybe I can figure out a way to fit that in tomorrow or maybe the next week. So you mentioned going down. You mentioned a little bit of injury stuff, and you mentioned specifically gravel. And I know about some injuries from gravel because I was nearby on one of them, and then I heard about the other one this last year. I'm specifically talking about Unbound. It seems like Unbound. How many times have you done or attempted Unbound?
I'm a two-time, let's call it attempter. I've attempted twice and I failed twice.
So
both times are very strange. They were very distinct failures.
Okay, so let's. The first one was in 2022.
Yep. Wrecked 5 miles in, broke my calcaneus, which is your heel bone, and a very unusual break for a bike race. I don't know if I've ever heard of a bike racer breaking their calcaneus. Rode another 5 miles, figured out this isn't going to work. Really not going to work for another 190 miles, and I pulled the ripcord and then spent the rest of the summer healing and building back. 2023, I made it 160 miles, and it was just kind of a culmination of a lot of things that wore me down. Ultimately, I didn't have the right training plan. I don't know if you can train 10 hours a week, which is about what I was doing. I don't know if you can do 10 hours a week and get ready for Unbound. I thought I might get lucky, but I didn't, and just wasn't going to work for me. And I don't think ultra distance is my thing. I don't want to do that anymore. I like 100 miles. 100 miles is a perfect distance. Let's not go too far past that. I'll do gravel worlds. I'll do gravel worlds, but they're not going to walk us through an hour of peanut butter mud after 20 miles at gravel worlds. And if they do, I'm going to turn around and go home because I'm not doing that anymore. It was not fun.
So I was actually for a moment there. I'm like, I'm really impressed. Like hey, it wasn't the right training. Like no mention of mud. And then,
you got to compare it to John Rocky, for example. He's also been a podium finisher at the gravel series at Silver City. He was third place right behind me at Silver City. Yeah. And then he was third place a week before that at the Good Life Gravel Enduro that Raffle puts on. So he and we've ridden together a lot. He had a fantastic finish. He finished Unbound. He walked through the same mud I walked through. But ultimately, what's the difference? Well, I think he had a more resilient training plan than me. I was trying to be two things at one time. At the same time I was trying to train for Unbound, I also really wanted to win Lewis and Clark Lookout Point mountain bike race, which I already talked about.
Right.
You can't do both.
Yeah, that's a very different race.
I can't do both. And so I guess I made my choice.
Well, yeah, yeah, or the choice gets made for you, and you think, so okay, so the Unbound has a little bit of a history for you, and it seems like you're getting a sense that, hey, maybe these ultras are not for you,
Yeah.
except for gravel worlds, and that kind of
And
makes sense
I
because
get
of
to sleep in my bed for gravel worlds. That's a big part of it. Like I have 4 kids. I have a beautiful wife. Why do I want to go drive away somewhere and spend the night in some crappy bed? No, thanks. I like to stay in my bed. I really just enjoy the small, like the gravel series is perfect for me. I love going to Silver City Century. I love going to Glenwood, talking to all the guys, having fun, racing my bike. I mean, that doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion. It doesn't hurt that, I tend to place well at the small events, but that's not it. Getting 40th at Unbound wasn't going to be the problem. The place wasn't the problem. It was just like, it just broke me.
well, it is hard. Those travel elements. I mean, you almost have to train to travel. Like
Yeah,
you have to like
that's a
spend
good point.
time traveling to kind of get
And we've
acclimated to
discussed
that.
this, you and I. We've discussed travel before, not in the context of bike racing, but you're a big traveler. I hate traveling.
I do. I do love travel. I love new stuff all the time. And so for me, the thing that like builds up my energy is the fact that I get to go explore something. And even when I'm driving down the road somewhere new, to go to somewhere new, I will look off to the side of the road and go, oh man, really wish I could go down that road. Is that a feeling that you have as you're traveling around?
Never. When I travel, I think, I already live in Iowa. Why am I going anywhere? I'm already here.
Wow, you are that much of an Iowa fan that
I
you're
just
that there's no better place than Iowa.
I'll scroll through Google Maps and like look at the photos people upload. I'm like, oh, that is a place. Interesting. That it doesn't, yeah, no appeal to go travel for me.
Okay, well, I do know there's a few places that you haven't been yet. You haven't done.
There's a
Have
few
you?
places I haven't been. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get you on a few more races, at least in Iowa, to go that far.
Oh yeah.
Um, is there like this is a question that I often ask. Is there a bucket list race or ride that you're like, you know what? I hope to eventually get to this one.
It's so cliche. I do want to do Leadville. I'm gonna keep putting in the Leadville lottery. It's only 100 miles. My experience with altitude, I've never been at that level of altitude, but my experience with altitude is I do pretty good. So yeah, I'm gonna keep putting in Leadville, see what I can't do. And if I ever go back to Lutzen, it will be to improve my starting place for Leadville.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because you can earn a better starting place at Lutzen, a qualifier.
Yeah, I've hiked around and been around Leadville. I haven't been in the race yet. I've considered putting in for the lottery. It's a big one. I find that I also struggle with like the big crowds and the big races. My wife would race, and she did things like the Boston Marathon, and I just looked around at me at these huge crowds and these huge groups, and I'm just like, it gets my heart going. I end up with like zone 4 heart palpitations just standing in the crowd with those, and the excitement takes me a little while to calm down with that. But Leadville is beautiful. That's an amazing area, and it's an amazing accomplishment just to finish it. Like power line and those things.
Yeah. So we'll see if I ever get out there.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about just quickly on kind of something that we've talked about in the past is this healing process, given that you've had these injuries and how you've kind of bounced back from them. Because as I find, as I get a little bit older, and we're about the same age, I find that I have to spend a lot more time in recovery to balance out any sort of training benefits that I'm getting. So tell me a little bit about what you've learned over the last, say, 10 years about what it means to really recover and to keep your body in a good kind of like mechanical shape.
Yeah. So I'll start with recovering from acute injury where like I hurt my foot, and I'll go back to, I think 2018. I thought my racing days were winding up because I had chronic pain in my right knee, and I I'd go on a ride and it would loosen up, and then I'd ice it after the ride. And I think eventually this is going to heal its way. It's going to figure itself out. And it never did. And after like 6 months, I went to a physical therapist named Mike Bartels. I tell everyone about him because he gave me second life in my race career. And I went to him and I was like, dude, there's something wrong with my knee. And he says, how do you know there's something wrong with your knee? I was like, well, I hit my knee about 6 months ago in a mountain bike race, and it's just never felt right since. And I did some imaging. I got some x-rays and there was nothing broken. And he was like, oh, okay. And he moved my knee. He felt it. He watched me walk around and he's like, I don't think it's the knee. And then he checks my mobility and he watched me breathe and he sits there and he thinks. And after about 10 minutes of watching me walk around and moving my arms and my legs, he said, have you ever damaged your right rib cage? And I was like, yeah, in like 2013, I had a mountain bike wreck and hurt my right rib cage really bad. And he was like, yeah, we need to loosen that rib cage up. And after a couple of weeks of exercises, my knee stopped hurting and I don't feel my knee anymore. And I guess my tight rib cage had me a little crooked, which had my pelvis a little whatever the freaking it was. My knee was the canary in the coal mine telling me that there was something out of balance.
Wow.
And he traced it to my rib cage and that injury. And then there's been other things where like I've tweaked my lower back. I think everyone has back issues and he's kind of worked with it. He calls it, I think it's called postural restoration. And ultimately, as we fixed all of these things that are wrong with me, peeling away like an onion, we've gotten to a place where I can really focus on strength training and really working my posterior chain hamstrings and glutes using deadlifts, which to the point where deadlift I don't feel like is risky. It's not a risky lift. It's a therapeutic lift where I feel better the day after my deadlifts than I do the day before my deadlifts.
Is that because you're activating those muscles, or that it's kind of like settling? I mean, I've seen you lift. I've seen a few, I don't know if they're Facebook or some sort of post somewhere where I'm like, dude's putting up some pretty good weight, you know, in a deadlift form. Like what do you think that deadlifts and that heavier weight is doing for you as a cyclist and kind of keeping that?
Sitting around all day at work and then sitting on my bike, I'm shortening and tightening my hip flexors and I'm lengthening and disengaging my glutes and hamstrings. And that's not the way we're designed. That allows my pelvis to be tilted forward and then my back starts to hurt. Well, as I do this therapy and I get my glutes and hamstrings back engaged, then the pelvis comes back to a neutral position. My back doesn't hurt. My hip flexors lengthen and release. And my hamstrings and glutes are engaged. And guess what that turns into? A far more powerful pedal stroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this whole process of we're coming back from injuries and then working with Mike Bartels on strength training has really revolutionized the way I push the pedals down.
Yeah. And you do it well.
That's the first thing when you're talking about recovering from injury with a therapist and getting past the cliche of like, well, it's just old age. That's what happens when you get old. No, it's muscular imbalance. Unless you have like a broken bone or a torn ligament or something, it's not just old age. It's a muscular imbalance that is fixable. You can solve that. And I look back on my running career, all of those injuries I had, it was just muscular imbalances that could have so easily been fixed. But I didn't know it in the 90s. So
I don't know if a lot of us did. If you could go back, and this is a question I ask often, is like the magic wand question. If you could go back with a magic wand to that age, what resources or what things do you wish you had known to keep those injuries at bay?
Crunches aren't core work. Planks are core work.
Mm-hmm.
Lunges, deadlifts, and sleep more.
Yeah. How much sleep do you get?
I sleep, according to my Aura ring, I sleep about 6.5 hours a night, which isn't enough. My ring is always chirping at me to sleep more. So now let's talk the other side of recovering from a workout where you've kind of broken yourself down, but it's not really an injury. So more recently, I've been drinking muscle milk protein supplement. Mm-hmm. It's not intuitive as an endurance athlete, but our protein requirements are much higher than I previously thought it was. And that's been helping. And then, you know, if you can get the sleep, you can get the sleep. Hydration, a lot of people call that water. Bull crap. Diet Coke is hydration. Let's cut the crap. And then people talk about eating clean, and I've associated eating clean with being run down and lacking energy because there's not enough sodium in clean eating.
Interesting.
Go ride 100 miles on a hot day and don't douse yourself with water, and then let yourself dry off and just go like this and see how many Cheetos worth of salt is right there.
Okay, so I'm someone who grew up in the high desert and everything, and now that I live in Iowa with a place that has humidity, which is beautiful, I love it. But I sweat a ton, like an absolute ton.
That's a physiological adaptation. That's good. That's something you develop with endurance training.
Right, and you know, doctors call me healthy, and women call me gross. I've kind of like, you know, come to peace with the fact that I can drop easily 5 pounds worth of water weight on a 2-hour, 3-hour workout if I'm not fully heat adapted or things like that. But when you say, okay, you know, go sweat a whole bunch and then douse yourself with water and then
no, don't douse yourself with water, so you don't wash it off.
Oh,
and then once you dry from a really hard workout, just go like that and see how much salt you have.
So rub your hand across your head and you see how much salt, like, and that's the thing that actually I worry about a little bit is I don't feel most of the time that I am salty from my sweat, but I am not I often will put in both of my body bottles some sort of electrolyte drink, and fairly heavy electrolyte amount and things like that, and I will not put off salt. So how much, like when you were saying you're wiping your forehead with your hand,
yeah,
like how much salt are you feeling or experiencing when you feel like you're in the right zone for having enough sodium?
I don't know. I'm no nutritionist, and I've never looked into this. I just know how I feel. I eat a Ziploc bag of Cheetos every day.
Every day.
Every day.
It's just part of your daily routine.
On my way to a gravel race, I'm drinking Diet Coke and eating Cheetos because that's what I'm used to.
How long is this nutritional plan been?
On the way to a race, I'll just drink Coke, like Coca-Cola or Dr.
Oh, to get the sugars in.
Yeah.
Okay. How much caffeine do you think what's your tolerance level with caffeine at this point? Because I think everybody's different there, depending on whether they're drinking coffee or they don't use caffeine at all and only use it intermittently.
There's not that much caffeine in Diet Coke. So
about 35 milligrams or
yeah. So I probably get maybe 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. I don't know. I once took a gel that had 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. That was a wild ride. That felt like a bit too much for me. I don't know.
Yeah, for a long time, I don't think I had a caffeinated drink, maybe once or twice, but until my 30s. Like for a long time, caffeine, my coaches were always saying, do not drink bubbles, do not drink caffeine.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, just water, Gatorade if you have to. And they were always kind of warning off that. So I was always kind of scared of using caffeine. But now, especially as I get into like a 4 or 5 hour long effort or something like that, I find that caffeine does great things for me. About halfway through, I'll always try and plan on having a good bolus of caffeine at about my 2-hour mark or so to kind of like help my body continue to digest and keep going with all the other stuff I'm trying to put in it to keep my calories up. So
absolutely.
I think caffeine's a very useful tool, but definitely something you have to kind of like adjust to yourself. Which kind of brings me up with a nutrition question I had, because and this is me probably looking at other people going, oh man, I really wish I looked like so and so. And I don't, so I weigh about 172 pounds usually, but every once in a while I'll jump up to like 180. And only recently, within the last couple of years, I've maybe dropped down to like 165. And this was when I was training for a lot of like a half marathon and some faster paced runs and things. But I always look at guys, and I put you in this group, and there's a lot of them up on the podium that I just look so cut, they look so fit. And I'm like, I know I'm the same age, but I cannot get that look. And I cannot get what I think, like I think of myself as probably not as fat adaptive in terms of using those stores as what I see some of the more performant riders are as. And I wonder if this is just me, or if this is something you actually think about, or if this is something that's not even on your radar and you don't worry about your fat adaptations and when and how you're cutting and how you feel and how your emotions do when you are cutting. So I'm curious about your relationship with kind of weight and what you think about it. And we'll see how healthy your relationship is.
So yeah, a lot to say there. I definitely look at body weight because obviously it's just an equation of, I don't know, aerodynamic drag plus body weight divided by power, right?
And yeah, you know, that power to weight ratio, even beyond aerodynamics, you know, if you're pushing more up a hill, you're working harder. Yeah.
So first thing you talked about, adaptations to burning fat, the metabolic pathways that you can open up. You can train that within reason, within your genetic abilities by doing things in the off season. I'll often do a ride in ketosis by doing a set of intervals before breakfast, breaking myself down till I'm bonking, and then just powering as hard as I can in that bonk. And then when I'm done, I'll cook 10 eggs, eat 10 eggs, and then fall asleep, wake up sick. So
oh my gosh,
it's a terrible experience, but you know, it forces your body to open up those metabolic pathways to burn fat as a fuel source. However, I don't think that your body fat percentage and your ability to burn fat are exactly the same things. Again, I'm not a nutritionist. Body fat percentage is it's caloric deficit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for most people, a six-pack is in the kitchen. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, I talked about eating Cheetos, but I'm very particular when I eat those Cheetos. I don't eat those Cheetos right before bed. I eat them midday, usually near my workout.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll often, if I'm not fueling for a hard workout, I'll go to bed hungry and I'll wake up and I won't eat until 10 or 11 a.m.
Okay, so you're intermittent fasting is what I usually
loosely.
Yeah.
Loosely. I don't have a specific regimen because it all depends on my workout schedule. But especially during the season, I'm not trying to do workouts that aren't fueled.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a thought exercise I ran with a buddy of mine who was having a similar conversation where he was like, what do I need to do to lose weight? And I said, how hard would it be for you to eat 4 Snickers bars in one sitting? 4 Snickers bars in one sitting. He was like, easy. I could do 4 Snickers bars in one sitting. So you wouldn't throw up? No, I might not enjoy the 4th Snickers bar, but I could do it. And I said, that's 1,000 calories. How hard would it be to get on an elliptical and crank out 1,000 calories? Because, you know, it estimates based on your heart rate, it estimates your calories. And most people do 250 calories and they think they've done it. That's 1 Snickers bar. You bought yourself 1 Snickers bar with that 250 calories on the elliptical. So there are a few people who could go out and burn 1,000 calories in an hour workout and then get on the bike and do it again the next day and do it again the next day. If you just look at it, 1 kilojoule roughly equals 1 calorie. That's the estimate. A kilojoule of work on your bike, if you have a power meter, equals 1 calorie. And if it's difficult to burn 1,000 calories on your bike, but easy to eat 1,000 calories, then you know, okay, I'm going to make my progress in the kitchen, not on the bike. Some people, the bigger your engine, like I was riding Silver City with Adam Belting. Mm-hmm. He's a big guy. He's not fat. He's a very big guy. And he's matching me on the climbs. And I'm just thinking to myself, how many watts is he putting out right now?
Right, because he's got to be 6'4", and you're probably more of a 5'10" kind of guy, right?
Yeah, I think he's over 200 pounds, and he's climbing with me. And I'm just estimating, like, how many calories is he burning in this 100 kilometers? I bet he burns 500 calories more than I do. It's just a matter of math. How big is your engine? And does your diet match that engine?
Yeah. What what have you learned in the last last couple of years? What do you need to fuel ahead of time? When do you know you're like, okay, I properly fueled, or when you're like, I'm definitely low. What what do you go into it with into most efforts at this point?
Totally depends on the race. If it's going to be a crit tomorrow, I'm going to just have a few carby things in the late morning, early afternoon. If it's 100 miles, I'm going to eat myself sick with carbs the day before. I'll feel sluggish at the beginning, but I'll feel better 3 hours in than I otherwise would have.
Yeah. I think this is, for me, I love getting on these podcasts and interviewing and talking a little bit about nutrition and these tactics with folks that are on the podium, because so much of racing is science, but it's not like science at large. It's using the scientific method to figure out what it is that's going to work for you and the engines that we have, because there's so many variables, and so you have to constantly be experimenting and find out what are the themes that work. Has there been anything in the last little while that you're where the variables or whatever has changed and you've had to make some adjustments to account for that, and what do you account to that change?
Use of sugar.
In what way?
I used to be able to eat sugar throughout a workout and feel fine. And now the more sugar I eat in a workout, I get my stomach just doesn't like it as much. And so that's been kind of a problem, that I can't fuel with sugary stuff.
So what's the alternative for you? What are you working with most?
I don't know, just like an upset stomach.
I've heard some people, I mean, honey are you putting honey, like the raw honey type of, I've heard that some people do better with that. Is that something you've tried?
That's a lot lower on the glycemic index. I mean, if I had time, I'd be making myself those rice cakes, but I don't have time for that.
We'll talk to Tiffany. We'll see if we can get you a rice cooker for Father's Day or something like that.
Okay.
All right. Well, this has been fantastic. You are. Oh, I always learn something from you whenever we chat. So I always appreciate that. What is the next big thing that you're looking forward to?
Dude, your next race. I'm putting everything on the line up in Pisgah. I'm going for it.
So, so preparation Pisgah is now known as a Soldier Cutoff Hilduro. I'm terrible at naming things. It's something I'm still working on. I love this race. I love this course so much, but it's at the worst time. It's in August, right before Gravel Worlds, and it's the same day as Core 4. So I feel like the field ends up being way too low for the amount of beautifulness that the course is. It's really a beautiful course, and how great the amenities are there. Like, I'm going to talk this up just for a moment, because there's a shower there at the park, and there's great camping in Pisgah, and it's amazing. I went out and previewed a little bit of the course with Casey Ralston on Friday. And have you ridden much out there north of Missouri Valley?
Yeah, so I have been through Pisgah half a dozen times this year. I spent a lot of time north up there. It's a charmed landscape. Now, I am on the road usually when I'm up there. I've done very little gravel riding that far north, because it's 50 miles north of my house. So to get to Pisgah, I'm doing 100 miles round trip. If I go north of Pisgah, which I've done a couple times, but it truly is charmed country up there. It's wonderful.
Here's what I love about it, and tell me if this has been your experience. I love Pisgah because you get on the first B road and you climb, and instead of going down, you go on a flat, and then you climb again. And then you hit another plateau, and then you climb again. And for anyone who's grown up, I think, or done most of the riding in Iowa or Nebraska, for me, I love it, because I look over at them and they're like, when do we go down? And you don't for quite a while. I don't know if those are the routes that you're doing, but that's at least how at least the beginning of the Soldier Cutoff route is like. Have you found the climbing to be different there than in other areas? I know you're in the Les Hills as well.
It's probably bigger up there than it is down here in Council Bluffs. I bet the hills are bigger there.
Yeah.
Maybe Down here, we max out at like 280 feet, 300 feet. I bet up there you find 350-foot climbs, but I don't know. I don't know that for sure. I haven't really looked. I don't do much real analysis. I just kind of think and go.
Oh, well, that's a good way to do it too.
But there's way less traffic up there. Everyone's super nice up there. No one's buzzing you with their diesel engines. Everyone who passes you with their diesel engines passes slowly and safely. That's been my experience that far north.
That is true. Monroe County folks are pretty cool. Or actually, I might be mixing up my counties there. Yeah, I know that at one point we get up to about a 400-foot climb at one point on this route. So
everyone who's listening, that's where I'm attacking. That's the one. I'm going to go on that one.
You're not going to save it. Have you heard about 138th? That Class B road at 138th.
Oh, I'm going to attack there too.
It's the Dave Holtz did a great podcast, a great blog for us a couple years ago, or was it last year? I can't remember. Was it the last one? It. Yeah, where he was just yelling at his legs because there's quite a bit of a climb at one point. It gets pretty steep. It's the only hill in Iowa that has consistently triggered my Garmin to say, congratulations, you have a new max heart rate.
Cool.
So cool. All right. Well, Jonathan, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to and expect that we will chat again soon. So thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. It's really fun.
Well, thank you.
Later.